The Groundhog Day in the abandoned asylum, Ethan Cole, a young medical intern, never believed in ghosts or curses. When his supervisor at the hospital mentioned an abandoned psychiatric facility on the outskirts of town, he dismissed the ominous warnings as baseless superstition. The facility, once called Ravenwood Asylum, had been shut down decades ago after a series of unspeakable tragedies. Most of the staff refused to talk about it, and those who did only whispered about its dark history. One night, while pulling an exhausting shift, Ethan received an unusual call on his pager. The message instructed him to report to Ravenwood to assist with a medical emergency. Confused, he tried to protest. Ravenwood wasn't operational, but his supervisor, Dr. Mason, simply said, "Do as you're told. We'll talk later." Against his better judgment, Ethan drove to the asylum. Its crumbling facade loomed under the pale light of a full moon, windows shattered and vines snaking their way up the walls. As he stepped inside, the air grew cold, carrying a faint metallic tang. His flashlight flickered as he moved down the dark, echoing corridors. "Hello?" he called out, his voice trembling slightly. No answer. Then suddenly a scream echoed through the halls, piercing, shrill, and unmistakably human. Ethan ran toward the sound, his heart pounding. The first loop, Ethan woke with a start, drenched in sweat. His alarm clock read 6 a.m., and sunlight streamed through the window. His heart was still racing, and he could vividly remember every detail of the asylum. The scream, the cold, the oppressive darkness. But now he was in his bed, back in his small apartment. He chalked it up to a bad dream and got ready for work. The day unfolded normally until once again, his pager buzzed. The same cryptic message, "Report to Ravenwood Asylum." This time, unease gripped him. He tried to tell his supervisor about the strange déjà vu, but Dr. Mason gave him the same dismissive response. Reluctantly, he found himself driving back to Ravenwood. Everything happened exactly as it had before. The eerie silence, the scream, and then nothing. When Ethan woke up again at 6 a.m., he knew something was terribly wrong. The pattern emerges. Each day, Ethan found himself repeating the same events. No matter what he did or how he tried to change his actions, he always ended up at Ravenwood. The days blurred together, and his sense of reality began to fracture. The asylum itself seemed alive, shifting its halls and staircases like a living labyrinth. Doors that were open in one loop were locked in the next. Patients' files would appear and disappear, their contents cryptic and unsettling. But the worst part was the scream. Every night at exactly 3:15 a.m., a blood-curdling scream echoed through the asylum. He tried to find its source, but it always led him deeper into the building's decaying heart, where he would eventually black out, only to wake up in his bed again. Evelyn. On the fifth loop, Ethan met Evelyn, a nurse who seemed oddly out of place. She was sitting in the staff lounge, staring blankly at an old clock on the wall. "You're new," she said without looking at him. "What do you mean?" Ethan asked, startled. "You're stuck," she replied matter-of-factly. "Just like the rest of us." Ethan felt a chill. "The rest of who?" Evelyn turned to him, her eyes hollow. "Everyone who gets caught in the loop. We're all pieces on the board. And the asylum, it's the one playing the game." As he pressed her for answers, Evelyn revealed fragments of the truth. The asylum had been a place of unspeakable experiments, and the souls of those who had suffered there were now trapped, unable to escape. The loop fed on fear and pain, and the more Ethan resisted, the stronger it became. "They're watching," Evelyn whispered, glancing nervously at the security cameras in the corner of the room. "If they know you've noticed, they'll come for you." The stranger in the mirror. Determined to break free, Ethan began testing the loop's boundaries. He tried skipping the call to Ravenwood, but the moment he ignored it, time would distort, and he'd find himself back at the asylum anyway. One night, as he washed his face in his on-call room, he noticed something horrifying. His reflection in the mirror wasn't his own. The man staring back at him had black, soulless eyes and a grin that stretched unnaturally wide. "Enjoying yourself, Ethan?" the reflection asked, its voice a guttural growl. Ethan stumbled back in terror. "What is this? Who are you?" The reflection tilted its head. I'm the one who's been waiting, and you don't belong here. Before Ethan could react, the mirror shattered and darkness swallowed him whole. They grew the descent. On the ninth loop, Evelyn finally gave Ethan a clue. If you want to end this, she said, you have to go to the basement. That's where it all started, but no one who's gone looking has ever come back. Ethan found the sealed door to the lower levels at the end of a rarely used corridor. Using a fire extinguisher, he broke the rusted padlock and descended the staircase beyond. The air grew colder with every step, and the walls seemed to whisper. The whispers turned to screams as he pushed deeper into the labyrinthine basement. Faces seemed to press against the peeling wallpaper, their eyes wide with terror. At the heart of the basement, Ethan found an old operating theater. Chains hung from the ceiling, and in the center of the room stood Evelyn, or something that looked like her. You shouldn't have come, she said, her voice layered with otherworldly echoes. What is this place? Ethan demanded. It's a trap, Evelyn replied, and now you're part of it. The chains came alive, snaking toward Ethan like living serpents. The final choice. As the chains closed in, Ethan noticed a swirling vortex of darkness in the corner of the room. Whispers emanated from it, urging him forward. Free us, they begged. End it. Ethan realized the truth. The loop wouldn't let him leave because he was the only one who could break it, but doing so would mean sacrificing himself. With no other choice, he stepped into the vortex. A new beginning. Ethan woke up in his apartment, the sun shining through the window. For a moment, he thought it had all been a nightmare. But when he glanced at the corner of the room, he saw a rusted chain dangling from the ceiling, its end dripping with black ichor. The asylum was gone, but its mark remained, and Ethan knew he was no longer alone.